Hi, how you doing? I have a lot going on in my raised bed vegetable garden, and I thought maybe we could do a mid-season update. My name is Sharon. I garden on a large yard in a small town in east central Saskatchewan, Zone 3. Welcome to my Sask Garden. So I thought we'd start in here with the peppers that I have in the grow bags. And, they just continue to amaze me. So just for anybody who hasn't seen any of the previous videos about this, I have 10-gallon grow bags. And in the soil is a mixture of ProMix and compost and potting soil. There was coconut coir. There's a fairly good mixture in there. And each of the bags holds 3 peppers. This particular variety in this bag is the Olympus variety, and it's a quick maturing pepper. And I just want you to see the fruit that has set so far. On some of the plants, I have counted 10 peppers that have already set. This one has 4 in a cluster right there. There's another one that it looks like it's set over there, another one at the back. And so throughout this plant, this one's a really nice size one right there. I'll just put my hands so you can see for size. Another great big one there. And one of the things that has impressed me so much growing in the greenhouse as opposed to out in the garden is the size of these leaves. I've never had this variety have such massive leaves. And so there's, definitely something to growing in the greenhouse. So I think these 3 plants within here, there's got to be probably 20 peppers already set. This variety is Red Knight, also doing very, very well. The leaves aren't perhaps quite as large, but it is setting a lot of fruit on each plant. I don't know that, well, there is some nice size. Not quite as big as the Olympus, but they are a very nice size. And they're substantial. You can feel the thickness to the walls. They're going to be very, very nice. In this last bag, I have 3 of the Anaheim variety. They're a hot pepper, and these are called Flaming Flare. And there again, you can see, I think I've counted each of these plants has so far 10 good-sized peppers, and they just keep setting. There's small peppers that I've seen as well. So there's going to be a number of hot peppers in front just from this bag. I also have 2 more in the vegetable garden. Water these every day or every second day, depending on the amount of sunlight. It has been kind of cloudy for the last couple of days and a little bit on the cooler side, so they're not sucking up the moisture quite as quick. I mean, you can sort of tell just by feeling the soil and the edges of the soil. That's important. The outside of the where the soil meets the bag, it dries quickly there as well. We also fertilize the peppers with Miracle-Gro 15-30-15 at least once every 10 days. Maybe a little more, and that really depends on how much you're watering, because the water will leach the nutrients through the soil. So if you're watering every day and the water's going all the way to the bottom and maybe dripping out, those nutrients are just being leached out, and you do have to water or fertilize just a little bit more often. As opposed to if you're watering something just twice a week, then you don't need to fertilize quite as often. Just before we get to the vegetable garden, I thought I'd stop here at my Haskap bushes. In here I have 3 bushes. I've had them covered all season, and so far I've harvested 3 nice, fairly good sized bowls of them, and Today we took off the netting from here. I'm going to get in here a little later and do one final harvest. If you're not familiar with haskap's, they're very hardy for zone 3. There's no issue with them whatsoever. They do suffer bird damage. The birds will, especially waxwings, the cedar waxwings or robins, they will really go through your bushes quite quickly, and as soon as the berries turn purple, they're going to eat them up faster than you can. There's some benefit to waiting as long as you can to pick the berries. They should come off very easily, almost falling off, and at that point they are at their sweetest. They're quite a tart berry. They do make great jam. I like eating them fresh. Maybe not everybody does. I keep a bowl of them in the fridge and I like them just with yogurt, but I really do like them. I think they're a great bush to have, and I don't know how tall they're going to grow. Maybe in this area, you know, maybe they'll get to 5 feet. I think what I'm going to do this year, later after the leaves fall, is I'm going to take off all of these lower branches, because as you can see, there's fruit that's set down here. A lot of fruit that has set down here. It's difficult to get to, and I think I'd prefer to have the bottom a little bit clearer. When I was picking the other day, this fruit down low had ants on it, and so I think I'd prefer to have just a little bit of clearance at the bottom and have the fruit higher up. To me, they kind of taste like a tart raspberry. Everybody has a different idea. I don't think they taste like blueberries, or they certainly don't taste like Saskatoons. That's a good sized berry. That's, I think, about as big as I've ever had. You know, I sort of always measure against my thumb. The juice of them will stain. You'll get a purple tongue if you eat enough of them. The potted zucchini is doing really well this year. There is, I've picked off, I don't know, maybe 5 so far, 5 nice sized zucchini. And there's several more that have set, and every day there's good blossoms, both male and female, so it's doing really good. This pot we also water every day and fertilize it with Miracle-Gro 15-30-15 about once a week. And I do like the 15-30-15 because that promotes more flowering. So when your fruit comes from a flower, I think it's beneficial to fertilize with something that's going to promote that flowering. If this is your first time growing zucchini, 2 things. First of all, these white splotches or silver splotches on the leaves, that's not powdery mildew. That is simply the color of the leaf. Some zucchini have that kind of coloration, so it's nothing to worry about. You don't need to treat it. You don't need to worry that you have some sort of a fungus. The second thing is, you may have fruit that looks like this. That one was tough to get out. You may have some young little fruit on there that looks like this, and that means that's not been pollinated. It's not going to grow any more than this, and it's just going to do nothing on the plant. So I usually pick them off and throw them on the compost. If they get past this stage, then you know that they are going to continue growing. This is my potato bed. So I'm just going to mention, now that we're in the raised bed vegetable garden, that I have 8 raised beds. 9, but 1 is the compost. 8 raised beds that I grow in, and each one is 4 feet by 12 feet. These are made from untreated 2x10s. So anyways, in one of the beds this year is full of potatoes. This is the Carib variety of potatoes. They didn't all bloom. I got blooms on some, but not on all. And you know, I've read that potatoes don't need to bloom. If they don't bloom, it's not that you're not going to get a crop from them. Of course, you never know what's going on down below. So I did dig one up the other day. It was right here, and I only dug it up because it looked like it was kind of yellowing. It was a little bit of a weaker plant, and so I thought, well, we'll see what's under there. And I had about 6 or 7 small potatoes, about golf ball size, and then one that was a little bit larger. So, you know, they just need the time. A Carib is an early variety, but I think mid-July might be pushing it for trying to get good potatoes. So also you will see that I have this bed mulched with straw. I don't hill potatoes. I simply just put a very good thick layer. This one's going to be about 4 inches thick or so, maybe more, 6 inches thick of straw. And I just did that after they were, perhaps 8 inches high or so. After they had some good height, then I came in and I mulched with straw. So, I mean, so far I'm fairly happy with the potatoes. It's been not a bad year for moisture. We're getting to the point now where we could use a good rain. I have drip watering set up in here underneath the mulch, and so we did water the other day because the soil was dry. In this next bed, I'm growing onion and garlic, and I'm having a problem with the garlic. I saw 3 stems the other day. I was inspecting because, you know, it's getting close to the time that we're going to pull the garlic for drying and curing for next year. And so I was looking kind of a little more closely than normal, and I found 3 that did not look good. And it turns out they have onion maggots, and I'll just put a photo on the screen of how that looked. The bulb also kind of smells sort of rottenish. Doesn't even really smell garlicky. And the way I noticed it was that some of the stems were not really drying from the top, from the bottom up, which is how garlic matures, and that's what you look for before you harvest. And they were all sort of just yellow from everywhere, and I still do see some like that. I also see one over here. I'm just going to pull it because I think that this one might also have that problem. You see they come up so easy. Oh, this one has some other weird problem. Oh yeah, it does have. So there's all kinds of worm activity, bug activity. But these, I believe, are the onion maggot right there. At first I thought they were wireworm, which also looks the same. There's also spider mites on here, I see. Like, you know, I think once a plant starts to weaken, then all kinds of bugs are going to attack it. But yeah, so this is not as far gone as the ones that I pulled a couple of days ago, which were in the photos. So I'm not entirely certain what to do here, if I should pull them all at this point and just try and harvest what I can. I don't know what, you know, they need to develop paper wrappers in order to have some sort of longevity for storage, and any of the ones I've pulled have had none. So that's the garlic. You know, I don't know how that happened either. I don't know if it winters in, if that onion maggot winters in the seed that you plant or the cloves that you plant. I don't know. Last year on our compost pile, there was a great deal of fly activity, like just masses of flies, which is completely unusual. We usually don't get that kind of stuff. And they also were not regular house flies. I paid some attention, but I didn't try to identify the fly. The onion maggot comes from larvae of flies. Speaking of flies, you know, agricultural community, and so There's crop spraying in the area. You might hear that from time to time. I don't know if it came from the compost. We usually amend the beds with compost. We also amended the beds with some steer manure, that overwintering larva, and then the larva overwinters and then starts to feed off of whatever might be in there. So I don't know how it happened. I think what I'm going to do, though, regardless of what I get out of here, I think I'm going to start with new cloves for planting next year. I do practice crop rotations, so I don't know which bed is going to be garlic next year. I think I'll split my garlic and onion, though, just to be on the safe side. I would be terribly disappointed for the onion to also have the problem with the onion maggots. So far the onion looks great, and now that it's bulbing, it's hopefully going to start putting on some growth. And so for a bulb like this that's halfway out of the soil, I'm pretty happy with that. I'm just going to leave it. But for these bulbs that are buried just a little deeper, this is called spooning, and I guess the idea is you're supposed to use a spoon, but I'm going to just use my hand to show you that I'm just going to move away the soil from the very top of the bulb and just expose that a bit and just have about half of it above the soil. So chances are they're going to do that on their own anyway, but I can certainly help, as well as by keeping down any kind of weed pressure. I'm just going to come in and just kind of do that along the rows. Just expose about half of the onion. They only need to have their roots in the soil at this point. So I have a couple of cucumber plants here, and this one is the Quarantine. That one is Summer Dance, I think. Summer Dance is a long English. Quarantine is one that does not need bees. Parthenocarpic, I think, is what it's called. And earlier in the season it had some hail damage. I still have some leaves that have the hail damage, but there's new growth. And there's a couple of cucumbers that I can pick off. So that's about the size or smaller for Quarantine. You don't really want them to get too big. I have not seen a cucumber develop on the Summer Dance yet. I am a little bit disappointed this year in these cucumbers. The one year that I've decided just to grow 2 instead of 4 plants, I've decided just to grow 2 because in previous years I've had too many cucumbers. But it is only mid-July, and so I might be a little anxious. I've looked at previous photos from previous years, and this is about the same kind of result that I'm getting at this time of year. So probably with the hail damage, they may not have been set back, but they were set back a bit from the hail. Now the lettuce, on the other hand, has done extremely well and is starting to bolt. And we just can't eat as much as it was producing. I grew too many. I figured I grew too many, but this is how you can tell that your lettuce is going to start to bolt, is it sends up these long stalks. And if you take a leaf, it's going to have kind of a white milky substance that comes out of it. And that is going to be an indication that you're right there. I don't know if that'll pick up on camera, but that white sort of milky look at the break, your leaf is going to be bitter. And that's what happens when the lettuce starts to bolt. So I think I'm going to just try harvesting what I can. I think these over here are not quite there yet. They're probably going to be okay. These are romaine, I think. And so I'll harvest a bunch and then chop up the rest and put it in the compost. The chicory, on the other hand, is having no trouble with the heat. I do like them. I don't like it just all chicory in a salad. I like it mixed in with some others, but the leaves are good. There's no bolting that I can see, and so I'll leave those. They're doing okay. Also grow a bit of dill. I'm not going to make any pickles this year, so I just grew enough just for salads or for cooking, and they're doing okay. I do tend to pick off the seed heads just to promote more ferny stuff, and I may do that, just come in and trim them down to about half, and they respond by putting out more ferny growth, which is really just what I want, is the ferny growth. The other plants in this bed, in those 2 rows, are my attempt at Lisianthus. I think they're doing okay. I don't know, there's a whole bunch of flower buds coming, so I think they're going to be all right. Down here on this other trellis, these are cucamelon, which are supposed to be, little grape-sized cucumber kind of thing. Oh, here I finally see a flower and what looks like a fruit developing. They are just so tiny. But I've been looking at these. They're putting on lots of growth now. I'm happy with that because they kind of languished for quite some time. So we'll see what we get. I don't know. They're starting to vine really good. Something else I've never grown before, and I just thought, oh, that would be interesting to grow. So there they are, cucamelon. In the next bed here I have carrots. They're doing okay. They're fine. I don't know why I've not pulled any. I don't know what to say about them other than they're doing okay. And then beside the carrots are the tomatoes. And I have all different varieties growing in here, with the exception of the Plum Regal. The Plum Regal, I'm growing 2 plants instead of just 1. And so in here on the Plum Regal you can see nice fruit set, although not a whole lot more blossoms. I suppose there's some coming, but they did seem to have a lull in blossoming, and I don't know what that's from. We had a few really hot days, and I know tomatoes can stop blossoming or have blossom, their blooms fall, and they don't pollinate when there is a lot of heat. Also, when there's a lot of humidity, the pollen doesn't develop properly. And so that can also be an issue with tomatoes. I don't think we've really had that problem. But, again, maybe just a little bit impatient and hoping to see more than I am. This one is Juliet. It's one of my favorite tomatoes to grow. That's about the size of the fruit right under there. They're really just a nice 2-bite type of tomato, a saladette type of tomato. They're very good. This is one of my Italian tomatoes. This one's called Borghese, and I do see some fruit down on the bottom there. When I say Italian, it's because I picked up some seed while we were on our trip to Sicily, and so that Borghese is one of the seed that I picked up. Next we have Esterina. This is another one of the seeds that I brought back from Italy, and I think it's called Fiorente or something like that. This kind of fruit that's got that kind of shape to it, I've always called it a Sicilian type of tomato, so I guess that's what's going on there. The next one is Beef Maestro. Let me just get my foot in there. And that one's got 1 tomato that's beautiful. It's giant size already back in there. But again, not a whole lot more going on, not a whole lot of blossoms. And it might just be a later kind of tomato. And then on the end here we have another Plum Regal. It's got about as much fruit as the other one. And this one I was just hoping would be the plum tomato that instead of instead of some of the others that I've grown in the past, like the San Marzano is fine, but I was hoping for a bigger harvest within our time frame. And another person I watch on YouTube had recommended the Plum Regal, so I'm giving it a try. So far I'm happy with the fruit set. And here is Esterina growing in a pot. Esterina is the variety of the tomato. I have one also in the vegetable bed. I had a video a couple weeks ago about repotting Esterina into this 5-gallon pail, and I think she's doing pretty good. She has lots of fruit set, lots more coming, big clusters, you know, nice big clusters. It's a yellow tomato. Also lots of blossoms happening here, and I've had to tie her up a couple more times. I use this Velcro stuff and just tie her up for a bit of support. And if you've not seen the video on how I did this, I'd encourage you to look at it about how I stabilize the pot and stuff. I also have since put some straw on top for mulch, just to keep the moisture a little bit more, although we water this every day. 3 liters? No, it's more than that. It's about 5 liters of water every day. Also, one of you mentioned that you didn't have any luck with black pots, and I did think about that when I planted it in this black 5-gallon pail, and your comment made me think on it just a little bit more. So what I've done is I'm using this table, and I'm just setting it here wherever it goes, just like that, which shades this side of the front side of the pot, and that front side faces, basically this table is facing southwest, so it's shading the pot some, just to try and cool it a bit. So thank you for the comment. Thank you for making me think about that again, and coming out here and, I don't want to say MacGyver it, but looking around and thinking, well, what could I shade it with? And this seemed to work out pretty good. So yeah, I'm happy with Esterina. The Esterina in the garden bed, I don't really talk to her very much, but this one out here, she's doing excellent, and I'm very happy with it. The rebar stakes are 10 feet tall, so she can grow as much as she wants to. In this bed I'm growing melons, and I have 3 honeydew melon plants in this section and 3 cantaloupe in that one. I'll have to put on the screen what type of honeydew this is, what variety it is, but they have 3 good-sized fruit set already, and there's little ones, quite a few little ones now. There was a lull, like I think the bees go on vacation for a few days in early July. There was definitely a lull with bee activity. Where they went, I don't know, but these are doing nicely. I don't think they're growing anymore. I think now they're beginning to turn color, and I'm actually going to have to look and see when they are supposed to ripen, like what they look like when they're ripe. But so far I'm pretty happy with this. I didn't expect this early, and I can see other green fruits that are growing. There's a nice one here, and another one over there. But that's how they start out growing, and then they get that kind of netting on them there. These sticks are for where to water, because once it gets so full of vines, I don't overhead water with a sprinkler in these. That can lead to powdery mildew on these kinds of plants. So we water with rainwater by hand just with a watering can. And each of these sticks is in the middle of the depression, so I bank up the soil around the root ball, and then each of those depressions will probably hold, I don't know, 2 liters of water maybe before it'll start to kind of spill over. So we wait for that to kind of settle in and then water again, just to keep the water at the root ball because that's where it's needed. And these cantaloupe, I think are, working about the same as the honeydew. Very nice size. I'm just super thrilled with this right there. And it's starting to show. I put a little bit of straw there just to kind of keep it from the soil. It's starting to show a little bit of color, or that yellow spot like you would look for a watermelon. You look for that yellow spot on the bottom for ripeness. I don't know if it's the same here, but it's starting to show that bit of color on the underside. So 3 cantaloupe, each of them planted in that kind of shallow depression to hold the water around the root ball. Happy with them. Here is the cabbage and the broccoli bed, and I've been really happy with it. The cabbage has done well. The cabbage a lot of it is getting to the point where it can be harvested, and I did harvest one. This is the Tierra cabbage. It's an early cabbage. It's very tender, and what it's best used for is coleslaw, in my opinion. Fry's pretty good too, but it doesn't make good like cabbage rolls. So if you don't know about harvesting cabbage, you want a nice firm head. You want to feel that firmness. So these actually feel like they're all fairly close to harvest. And I'll leave them until they show signs of, if you leave a cabbage too long that's mature, it may show signs of cracking on the top, and that if you leave it, it'll crack right open. So it's best to harvest before that happens, because it can destroy your cabbage. It's still edible if you get it quick enough and the bugs don't get in there. The broccoli, I harvested all the heads. They were all mature and I harvested them all. I'll just put a photo on the screen. Nice. I think they were 1,300 grams for 9 heads. I've left the plants because they're going to grow side shoots, and there's one here. And they'll grow quite a few side shoots. We may land up getting another 1,300 grams or more just in side shoots right there. You can see them all. This is the first plant that I harvested, so it's putting out all that new growth. And broccoli, what we eat is basically the immature flower head, and it just wants to flower, and so it's just going to keep up putting that growth up, trying to perpetuate itself by setting flowers and then seed. If we didn't keep cutting it off, it would go to seed. Over on this side is my first planting of beans, and flowering. I'm really happy with how high they are this year. We've actually put string to hold them. I have 2 rebar on this end, 2 in the middle, and 2 at the end. And then we just put string along just to kind of stake them, because otherwise, especially with this height, they would fall over. But they are starting to flower, and they're setting fruit, or they're setting their beans. So they're doing really, really well. Next to the beans is the peppers. More peppers. They're the same variety as what I'm growing in the greenhouse, and they are also setting nice fruit. The plants are not as big as the ones in the greenhouse. They have big leaves, but not as big as the ones in the greenhouse. And yeah, I think they're doing okay. And there's one with lots of fruit, although this one, I don't know what this is about. Kind of bumpy. Not sure why. There's no bugs or anything, so I don't know. And then you can see here These are the Anaheim Flaming Flare hot peppers, and maybe they're just not quite as big as the ones that are growing in the greenhouse, but certainly still very nice. And then just next to the peppers, I've put in another row of beans. These I seeded just toward the end of June. I think it might have been June 30th. And I usually do this just so we don't have a great deal of beans to have to deal with, because you know I just plant beans for fresh eating. I don't do anything particular with them. I'm gonna have a lot this year though. Just looking at the at those tall ones over there and how many blossoms there are, I'm going to have a lot. You're going to notice these hoops throughout, and you know, generally they're much lower, and I use them throughout the season to protect the crops from cold weather, from wind. They were excellent in the hail that we got. Anything that I had covered did not get damaged at all. So we came in with rebar, and just to increase the size of these, the height, and that way I can put cover over top and protect anything that is taller, and that's mostly for hail protection. You don't always know when hail's coming, of course, but you know, we do get alerts that that it could be coming, that you know, and so I thought it would be a good idea to have hoops on almost every bed for that hail protection. And I would use shade cloth, which is thicker. I have 4 good size thick shade cloths that would cover everything. So that's my thought about that. It really didn't take much to increase the size of this, to increase the hoop, and that was just some rebar stakes. I think they're maybe 4 foot, and then pushed into the ground about 1 foot, and then this PEX just slides on. That's why the hoops are all on the tomatoes as well. I forgot to talk about this. So I use these tomato cages upside down. When you buy them, the small ring is at the top, and then it spreads out, and then it's got 4 feet at the bottom, 4, you know, legs. And so what we do is we cut off that top ring to create legs at the top, and that becomes the bottom down there. I don't know why they're made that way, because the top always has more growth. You'd want the wider section here, and that leaves 4 legs and no ring at the top. I have put string in the past around here to you know, to hold the plants more, but this year I just took more of these PEX, that tubing that I wasn't using anywhere else, and I just slid them over this. This is for hail protection, because now I can drape something over and pin it, and hopefully protect if hail's coming. If a big wind comes, that might be a problem. And finally, in the last bed here is butternut squash. These are a bush type of squash, although they also vine. This one is called Early Butternut Hybrid. Now I don't have room for them to vine on this side, so I've been taking these vines and just kind of redirecting them to go that way. I will allow the vining to happen just on the south side of the bed here. They can vine out that way, because I think that the vining is when they begin to produce fruit. They have a lot of blossoms in the center of the plant, and there's 5 plants in here. They have obviously just filled the bed, but from what I can see, I've looked, and although there has been quite a few blossoms, I have not seen any fruit set. Oh, I think I just see one. So there's one right there. So now this flower is going to open, and will be a female flower, and hopefully they will be pollinated. There's another one right there. So I do think they kick into gear a little more when they start vining. Hopefully the bees will start to come visit. I've considered actually removing some of the leaves, thinking that maybe the bees will then see the yellow flowers. They're nice big yellow flowers. But you know, we'll see how it goes here. I hope that they do produce some fruit. So that's the vegetable garden, middle of July 2025. I'm pretty happy with it all. Thanks very much for watching today. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, give me a thumbs up, tell your friends, and if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button. See you.